And I remember Bob saying, folks, so where you from? I said, I'm from Bethlehem. He goes, Bethlehem? He said, you ain't no brother. What do you mean, Bethlehem where? Like Bethlehem where Christ was born? And you went on for 3 years as my roommate. And I'll just say this, I learned so much. I was very blessed because I was the oldest of 8. And in my home, I kind of ruled the roost. You know, I did what I wanted to. I went where I wanted to. I came back when I wanted to. I was fortunate enough, and my family's fortunate enough. But you kept me in a straight path for 3 years, because at that time I could have been going in so many different directions, and you know what I mean. I was out there. I was this guy coming from a little place and then getting to a place like Boston, and I could have been lost. I really could. And from after you left and went to Vermont Academy after you got out of high school, and you went to Vermont Academy, you learned an awful lot at Vermont Academy, at an academy school. And you brought that to Boston College, and you brought a sense of while being my brother, you were almost like my father, who wasn't around. My father wasn't around for me. So as I went on in my life doing as I pleased, and some would say I'm still doing that as an adult, doing what I want to do, you kept me grounded. You made sure that, no, that's not quite the direction you need to be going in. And I appreciate that. It's done me well throughout my life. It's helped me as an alcoholic who's a recovering alcoholic. I went and I found help. And a lot of that has to do with what I learned from you. And I learned some good things from you. And I'm almost 13 years sober. And there are a lot of people that affected my life. But to start my life off as a college freshman, I had to have some real life guidance, and you were there, and I appreciate it.
Wow. Wow. I mean, my heart is full. You know, there's a reason why I've come here. I'm coming full circle, so to speak. I'm 60 years old.
Almost 60.
Oh, I'm 60, and to hear these things are important, because when you're a child, you may have heard them or even sensed them, but you don't have the experience or the psychic schema to associate it with anything and give it meaning and relevance. And so to hear you say it today with my frame of reference and my professional experience as a psychologist, I'm able to organize that and integrate it. And it's just all about love. And to hear it kind of validates and confirms some things that I need to know about myself from those days. And so I appreciate that. Moreover, I'm extremely proud of you, because one may have their own sort of recollection of themselves. I have a recollection of you that's probably different than the one you have of yourself. And I remember a person of great character, one who my mother spoke about fondly until she died, and brought you to my home.
Yep.
And my mom thought the world of you. And so that's the person I remember. And I had goosebumps when Steve Bigler organized the opportunity for me to be here to see you in person. So thank you.
And I'll tell everybody now, after we've given our wonderful thoughts of each other, let these folks know what you've been doing with your life, the books you've written, your motivational talks, where you're going to be. You're going to be speaking tonight, as he said. You're going to be speaking tomorrow at Del Valley Correctional Institute. And when we think of correctional institutes and you giving motivational speeches at correctional institutes, we just had a lot of people, talked about Aaron Hernandez yesterday.
Oh,
he ain't ever coming out.
Tragic.
His life is done at 25 years old.
Tragic.
So you're going to have an opportunity right here at Del Valley where there are some that will be there for years, but there are also some that are going to be there for months that you don't want to see. Obviously, you don't want to see them go back there again.
True. Well, as you know, I'm an author, and one of the books I brought here to give you as a gift is called People Are Never the Problem. And People Never the Problem is a sort of autobiographical book that I wrote that talks about the relationship between people and their behavior, and that people aren't the behaviors they exhibit. They are sometimes victims of that behavior or those ideas and attitudes, and they can make other people victims of those ideas and attitudes. And so when I go to the institution tomorrow, I'm going to be speaking to people because they are people, and I want to share a message of hope with those people. Aaron Hernandez's life isn't over. That's the tragedy.
You're right.
He will have a life, and the life that he will know will be restricted, and his freedom will be gone. And so my conversation is that he will be paying his debt to society, and he's still a human being that we have to love, and we have to try to figure out a way to resurrect his spirit in some way, because he's still a part of the human family. And a the atrocious thing he did, he has to be punished for. But we still have to recognize that he's a human being, and that it could be any of us, any given day, that can fall short.
As I said, you were there for me. There's no telling where, as I said, there are things that in my life that could have gone the wrong direction. I'm very fortunate to have you and some of the football coaches that I grew up with, and guys like Joe Ukika and
Just so, Coach.
Coach Daniels that were there for me, and rest his soul too, died of cancer. But
Yeah.
these are people in my life that have helped me through, and we all need help.
Yes.
And what you've been doing, you're about helping people. I mean, it's not about you and your fame. It's about what you can do to help others. And you've
Yes.
always been that way. You've always been that kind of person. So
Thank you, Mike.
I think everybody here is fortunate. It's fortunate on a sports talk show, and we talk craziness on this show anyway. We do talk a lot of sports, but we also talk a lot of things. We call ourselves the show of the people, myself and my partner.
Awesome.
And we do talk very serious topics. I talk about my alcoholism. And to have you here is a special day, I think, for everybody. Everybody that knows me, or has known me for 16, 15 years here in Austin, this is a special day for me, for them to know this is my brother right here. I've never had my brother on a show, so that my brother is here today, everybody. And this is my opportunity to share kind of my family with our listeners, which is kind of cool. Your thought, you also speak tonight.
Yes.
You've got a speaking engagement also tonight, and when you're not talking for folks at correctional institutions and things like that, Bob, what else are you talking to folks about? I mean, about life,
Yes.
just life and surviving life, because it is kind of a survival.
Yes, it is. And it's an opportunity to celebrate, right?
Mhm.
And so, as a professional, I'm a clinical psychological assistant in California, but I have a doctorate degree in organizational psychology. And so I have a consulting practice in California. I've practiced in China. I've worked in Africa, France, a couple other countries. I've helped corporations, and my work in those organizations are around helping people to synergize around collective values, to understand what their strategic purpose is and their vision and their mission, and to help them to create plans and systems that make those things become realities, so they can have high efficiency.
Is this a way of saying goal setting? Whether you're a football player or whether you're a CEO, about how to set goals and how to set your path?
Yeah, to a degree. I mean,
Mhm.
the goals are set in order to give the plan some way to be operationalized. And so if we're talking about sports, your goals are what you're going to operationalize per game, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right, and you have audibles that you call.
Sure.
And those are contingencies that are built on the goals, right? So the talk tonight will be about The Plastic Coated Leaf, which is my new book. And it's a book about an athlete who I am.
I know that picture.
That's
A friend of mine took that picture in college. That is a Paula James.
Exactly, and I was your roommate the day this picture was taken, right?
Yeah.
1974.
Yeah, that was Paula James, whose sister I dated for 3 years, who was just a little younger. My partner over there, Aaron Hogan, just a couple years younger. Yes, that's the young lady who
Right.
you said that she was like 15 or 16 or
Yeah.
something.
Yeah, you blew it, because I saw her a couple of weeks ago and she hasn't changed. She's outstanding. She's gorgeous. I mean, she's stunning.
Blew it.
She's stunning.
So
I mean, I'm being honest. She doesn't look like she's aged. The woman is she's a Mona Lisa.
She was the Mona Lisa.
She's gorgeous.
Dr. Robert Watts is here. He is going to be speaking tonight at the on Dawson Road. It's called the High Road on Dawson, which is, if you know where the Peter Pan mini golf is.
Yeah.
Right there, Barton Springs. Dawson Road is right there. You go up the hill. It's the High Road on Dawson. It is open to the public. You're free to attend. The High Road on Dawson.com is where you can find information. Dr. Robert Watts, who was Bucky's college football teammate and roommate at Boston College, and is now, as he said, has a doctorate in psychology, also organizational development, and is one of the top motivational speakers that you can find for your business or for your company. And how did you follow that path? You went off to the NFL, Doc, and you played football, but how did you go from that to what you're doing now?
Well, I think Bucky talked about the genesis of that when he talked about the fact that I went to boarding school first. So I was from about 9th grade to 12th grade. I was in a boarding school with Steve Bigler, who's sitting here in your audience, who helped to arrange bringing me here to be on your show. And Steve and I were in high school together for 3 years. And it was really that platform that led me to the things that I'm doing today, because it was there where I learned how to think and to be analytical and to put together a plan for my life, right? And so when I got to Boston College, I first majored in nursing, but I couldn't keep it up because of the grueling schedule we kept as a football player. So I switched to organizational communication, courses in cultural communication studies and things like that. But when the NFL was over, well, during the league, I want all the athletes who are listening out there, but I was a guy who always studied, whether it was on the bus going to the airport, whether it was on the plane going to the game, whether it was in the hotel before the game or on the way back from games. I had my books with me, and that's what I learned at Vermont Academy.
I was not studying at those times, everybody.
And so as a result, that first year we were in school, I had a 3.7, 3.8 GPA. So it was important to me to be a whole person. And I really took seriously the notion of student athlete. And I want every athlete listening who's currently in college or high school, junior high school, whatever, the emphasis is on student. The emphasis is on student. The athlete is ephemeral. It won't be lasting forever. But the student will always live, and we should be lifelong learners. And so that attitude and that posture enabled me to take courses and get into graduate school in the off season when I was a pro, and made my transition from professional athletes less traumatic than it would have normally been. So I went from that to finishing my graduate school work at San Francisco State University. And upon finishing the first semester there, they offered me a teaching position. So I became a professor while a graduate student at San Francisco State teaching communication at the university. And when I finished that up, the state of California offered me a forgivable loan scholarship so I could get my doctorate degree without having to pay for it. But it was in the course of doing that I developed cancer. And so I had lymphoma, and I spent a year fighting for my life. And when I got better, I also had post-cancer treatment depression. So I spent another 4 years trying to get my mind together. And when I came out of that, I wrote the book, People Never the Problem, which launched my consulting practice. And then led me to know Ken Blanchard, who's a famous author who wrote the 1 Minute Manager books. And subsequent to that, I decided to go back and get my doctorate degree at 50.
Nice.
So at 50 years old, I entered the doctoral program, California School of Professional Psychology, and I accelerated in a 3-year program and completed it in a 1.5 years. And I graduated and got conferred my degree.
He was always the smartest guy in the room. You know what I mean? No matter what it was.
The most.
Oh, is that how that happens?
Usually.
I mean, it just doesn't
Usually
happen?
It goes hand in hand, right?
Oh, I didn't realize that.
Dr. Robert Watts. All right, so the book, People Are Never the Problem. I was reading some of your stuff on your website, your literature. What does that become for you when you talk to a company or a corporation who's, as you said, with organizational dynamics, and how do you integrate that message that people are never the problem into being more accomplished as a company?
Well, I mean, success in organizations is about efficiency, right? Productivity is also about quality of performance, not just quantity, but also quality of performance. And so when we see people as problems, then we lose opportunities to work with people with the problems that they have. And all of us have problems. And organizations have problems, but when we focus on people as the problem, we suffocate people, we take away their confidence, we affect their psyche, and they can develop low self-esteem, but more importantly, they can disengage. And for companies to be really successful, people have to engage one another.
Mm-hmm.
Teams have to come together, athletic teams, corporate teams. You have to be able to be comfortable and eager to work with others. When you can't do that, then you can't share information. You can't work to solve problems together. I mean, you really can't be effective. We're social creatures, and if we're avoiding each other, we have a problem.
Yeah,
So,
and we do that, Bob. That's what we do. If you're not comfortable, you avoid people. If you're not comfortable, you separate yourself away from people. And I'm pretty sure they do that in companies. You know?
Absolutely. All
They've
the
got
time.
little cliques like they do in football teams.
Absolutely.
And you can't be successful with little cliques in your company.
No, you can't.
Everybody has to work for one goal.
Absolutely.
Mm.
And when people think if you can convince them they have a problem, then their motivation dies, because how they feel about themselves is retarded, right? And so then they can't release the energy that they need in order to do what they need to do. So they don't have the capacity at that moment, right? So if you know anything about performance, one has to have the required capacity to get something done, whether it's physical energy or whether it's cognitive energy. You have to have the proper amount of energy. And so when I think I'm a problem, my energy is reduced. Why? Because people aren't problems. People have problems. So you're actually functioning outside of yourself. It's inconsistent. It's a misnomer. So when we function as symbol-using creatures and misuse symbols, then we become victims to those symbols. And calling people a problem is one of the most damaging things we can do to people because they become defensive, right?
Mm-hmm.
So.
Well, that's useful in everything. Parenting.
Yeah, it is.
You know, anybody that works in any office can relate to everything you just said, I think, as far as or for any locker room, as Buck mentioned earlier.
Yeah, and and for us, I mean, we'll talk to Charlie Strong, the head coach, University of Texas. You know, the first African American head coach at the university ever, and his deal is about this whole team. It's about we're all going to get on the same page.
Excellent.
Some way, somehow, some shape, some form. We are going to get this thing together. There's not going to be anybody over here. You're not going to stay off campus over here because you're a senior. You know how that works. I want to be off campus. Coach, I'm a junior. It's time for – no, I don't think so. We can't get it done with you over there. You
Absolutely.
have to be right here.
Absolutely.
So we'll talk to him today. And before we let you go, Bob, and God, I'm going to miss you already. For these young kids that you've watched, we've been in sports all our lives. And just because you're doing what you do now doesn't mean you haven't forgot about sports.
No.
What do you see from young men and young women who are making the kind of money that they make in all sports today, and the things that they're losing in the process? What are they missing? Not the successful ones are doing okay, but because you make money doesn't mean you're successful. Those that are missing out on what they do in the communities and other things because they're about them, and we see a lot of those out there right now. We don't hear about the ones that are doing stuff because there's tons of them doing things too. But there's a lot out there that are about themselves. I think I see more of that than I've ever seen, ever.
I agree with you. I will point people to the book that I just wrote called A Plastic Coated Leaf, if I can, in closing, because it's a metaphor for what you just said, right? And I think you articulated it so well. But plastic coated leaf, the plastic in the title represents the football uniform, okay? And the leaf represents the fragile and sensitive humanity that wears that uniform. And in our society today, athletes more focused on the plastic than the leaf. The schools, the professional teams are more focused on the plastic than they are on the leaf. And when we don't focus on the leaf, it withers. Or if we don't focus on the leaf by treating it iconically because it wears the plastic, then it becomes the plastic. Okay? And we know what happens to plastic. It gets brittle and it breaks and is no longer useful, and so then we discard it. And so I will say that to young people today who are athletes, and not athletes, but specifically athletes since we're talking about them, is that I want to see more commitment to education, right? I want to see a commitment to that. I don't care about passion. Some days I don't feel passion, okay? But I'm going to be committed, that I'm going to be dutiful, and I'm going to get it done. And I want to see young people focus when they go to school to meet the agreements that are written in the contract that they sign. If you have an athletic scholarship,
yes,
it says that you're going to go to school, right? Don't worry about getting paid. You got a contract. Go to that school, get your education. Perform as hard in that classroom as you do on that football field. That's what I want to say to young people. Let's get our heads out of the clouds. Let's remember what's important. We have athletes disproportionately who end up broke when their careers are over. They don't even have their degrees, and they can't.
And had an opportunity to get it.
Yeah, and then you can't go back. It's difficult to go back. So I want to see coaches. I want to see parents. I want to see people who have influence over the social consciousness, like you gentlemen do. Start to send a message to our young people in this society to reset their priorities and make a commitment to being lifelong learners and strengthen the quality of their experience as human beings. Athletics is fine, but it's very ephemeral. It's over. We're 60 years old here today. It was a long time ago. But I am grateful that I focused on my education because I can continue to make a contribution as a citizen in this country.
It's a great message, and hopefully you can get out and hear more of it tonight. It's at the High Road on Dawson, which is at 700 Dawson Road here in Austin, just off of Barton Springs there, just past the Pitch and Putt McDonald's, right before the new barbecue place right there, Terry Black's. 700 Dawson Road, the high road on Dawson. It is open to the public. Everyone's welcome to attend. For information, you can go to thehighroadondawson.com. Also, you can find Dr. Watts all over the internet. He's got a website.
7 p.m.
He's got books for sale.
That's at 7 tonight, too.
Yeah, 7 o'clock.
Yeah.
7 o'clock tonight. I should mention that. Thank you. Dr. Robert Watts, he is a world-class motivational speaker, as you just heard. He's got books, and he's got a great message that folks should listen to.
And we're going to have to speak to him a little bit more often.
Yes.
On the show. We are going to have to do that a lot. And I'm going to have to speak to you a little bit more often than I have over the last million years, my friend.
I miss you.
I miss you too. I miss you too.
Doc, it's great to meet you.
Thank you.
Thanks for being here. Thanks for bringing him. And get out and see him tonight. And he'll be at the, you're also speaking at the Travis County Detentional Center tomorrow.
Tomorrow.
To the inmates with a message, which I think needs to be heard as well. Doc, thanks a lot. We'll come back. We've got the headlines. Jordan Spieth has finished his first round at Harbortown. We'll get the details and come back with our Coach's Corner. It's B&E on the Horn.
Awesome. Thank you, guys.